I was pregnant, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And so Brian asked me to share with you guys on essentially just kind of like cold and flu season. We talk about that as if like the winter time is when you're like sick more. But first I wanted to kind of like bust the myth on that for you. I think I kind of grew up with the idea that germs are kind of like the boogeyman. Like at any moment they're gonna like hop around the corner and just like get you know? But it actually has to do with what's going on inside our bodies. So we're all right now in this moment being exposed to the exact same things, and our bodies are gonna do different things with that. Some of us might leave here, hopefully not, you might be sick. You might be contagious right now and you're not feeling symptoms, and you might accidentally spread germs. So it's a very interesting thing how our body works and our microbiome, the environment that carries those germs. So in the 1700s in London, their cold and flu season was, or their plague season, was in the summer because it was hot, it was open trenches, they don't understand germs, people are walking through the streets through all these feces and urine, and the heat is just causing the bacteria to multiply. And in the winter, it's cold and freezing and people aren't going outside, and they weren't getting sick in the winter. So we can look back in different times in history and different cultures and see that actually people are getting sick at different times. It's not always just in the winter. And so what happens in the winter? We have less sunshine, right? We're outside less. We're inside our houses and we're not opening our windows because it's cold. There's less fresh air. We have also increased our stress overload, right? The holidays, seeing family you may not want to see, relational tension. You're spending money you don't have to buy things for people you don't like, you know the drill. Our schedules are fuller, and so we sleep less. And we know that good sleep is what helps our bodies to be healthy. We're also eating more sugar and junk food. Pretty much from Halloween to Valentine's Day is just like every month they're like, here's some more candy for that, right? And you're like trying to get your kids to stop eating all of it. And then also even just convenience food. We have less time, so we're eating out more. We're not cooking from scratch. But then people say, but every time I go outside when it's cold, like my nose gets runny. Like that has to be something, right? So it is. So when it's cold out, there's less humidity and moisture in the air, and so your body compensates, and so you will get a runny nose or sometimes itchy or watery eyes. Everybody's different and kind of reacts to that differently, but you're not crazy if you do go outside and you're really cold and your nose starts running. It doesn't necessarily mean you're getting sick. That's just your body trying to compensate for the lack of moisture in the air. So hopefully that makes you feel a lot better. Like, okay, if we can look at what are we doing in the summer that's different than the winter, right? You're probably outside more, eating fresher food, the fresh salads, and you're grilling, and probably drinking more water because you're hot, trying to be able to incorporate those things in the winter is going to be one of the first steps. But I kind of want to take it back even further, and in order to have a healthy immune system, we have to have healthy cells. So what are cells? We can go back to like freshman biology, right? It's like you have the nucleus, and around the nucleus is this protective membrane called cytoplasm. And inside the cytoplasm, it's made up of 3 basic components: salt, fat, and protein. So I kind of want to help you guys get a good picture on why salt, fat, and protein is so important, and I think our culture has kind of made at least animal fat, salt, and and protein to be kind of the enemy. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But our cells are dividing and mimicking each other all the time. So if your cells are weak or starving, if they're not getting salt, fat, and protein, and those weak cells are dividing, you are making more weak cells. So in order to have a healthy immune system and a healthy body, we need strong cells so that when they are multiplying, right, this process called mitosis, then that will help your body be able to make and reproduce cells that are healthy. All right, so some fun facts about protein, and protein does a lot in the body, and so this is kind of just covering most of the stuff that has to do with like your immune system, but there's a lot of other functions that protein does. But it helps carry oxygen that reddens our blood, so oxygen-rich cells are stronger to fight off bacteria and viruses, so we need oxygen-rich blood. In the form of enzymes, proteins digest our foods, synthesize essential substances, and break down waste products for elimination. Proteins in combination with a substance called sterols form hormones which regulate the delicate chemical changes that consistently take place in the body. So just because there are foods that contain protein, that actually doesn't mean those proteins are equal in nutritional value. So we know we need protein, and there's different types of protein that contain essential amino acids. So there's 20 amino acids, 9 of which can only be found in the food that we consume. And so if you ever heard the term complete protein, that's referring to a protein or a meat or something that you eat that contains those 9 essential amino acids. So a diet rich in soy is not going to have the same amino acids because soy, while it does have some, it doesn't have those 9 essential ones that we need that's in complete proteins like you find in meat and eggs. So eggs is actually one of the best things that you can consume if you're trying to get all of those amino acids. Let's see. So we need protein to have healthy cells and protect our immune system. So next would be salt. So in the 1800s, between 1812 and 1912, we used to consume 3 teaspoons of salt a day. Now, the daily recommended is far lower than that, right? We are told to avoid sodium and salt at all costs, but we do need a minimum of 1.5 teaspoons of salt a day. So low salt diets are at risk of developing parasites because your stomach doesn't have enough hydrochloric acid. If you don't eat enough salt, you can get metabolic syndrome, which is high blood pressure and insulin resistance. Salt also helps our adrenals work properly. Our adrenals are responsible for our stress hormones, so if you're stressed, your immune system gets suppressed. So we're actually going to talk a little bit about the different things that disrupt our immune system, and stress is on there. But when your body starts fighting or focusing solely on survival, your adrenals are on high alert, then you actually need more salt, more than 1.5 teaspoons, okay, 1.5. It's also needed to develop glial cells in the brain. So those are the brain cells that are responsible for creative connections and, being, an inspirational, what do they call the YouTubers, influencers, can't be that without those glial cells. And it's used for maintenance in the metabolic and immune support. So there are 2 categories of salt. There's evaporated sea salt and there's mined salt. So not all salt is the same. So when I say salt, I'm not saying like iodized table salt. We don't want to be consuming that. The process in that is it takes out everything that's good in the salt and just leaves you basically with a salty flavor. So if your salt is white, it's likely that it's been refined. So unrefined salt is going to be like the purest, cleanest form. So whether it's Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, you want, if it's like gray or kind of a tan color or pink, then it's not refined. And then next is fat. So usually people's biggest concern when I tell them you need to eat more fat is, what about high cholesterol, like heart attacks, clogged arteries? Like, fat does not make you fat. Fatty acid makes you fat. So carbohydrates convert into fatty acid, which is what causes you to retain and hold on to fat. Consuming fat yourself, and good quality fat, we'll talk about the different types of fat you want to be consuming, those do not make you fat. So 1/4 of our brain is fat, and it makes up only 2% of our body. So that should give us a little bit of an inclination that fat is really important. So cholesterol is actually a nutrient. It's an antioxidant and it stabilizes cell membranes. It's the hormone that is used for production of all other sex hormones. So if your cholesterol is low, then you're going to have a hard time producing the progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone that your body needs to be healthy. So it's actually really interesting. There was a Harvard study done, and they were doing a study on fertility, and they had 2 focus groups, and these were women who were struggling to conceive, pretty similar backgrounds, and one was on a very strict no-fat diet. The other was on a full-fat diet, so they had cheese, like eggs, milk, and within a couple months, everyone trying to conceive on the full-fat diet was able to get pregnant, and no one on the no-fat diet got pregnant. Now, Harvard used this as an opportunity to say, this would be good to get pregnant, and once you get pregnant, go back to your low-fat diet. So their result and their conclusion wasn't, maybe one day science and common sense might catch up at some point. But I think that just goes to show how essential fat is in the makeup of our body, okay? So it's also a key component to fighting infection. So cholesterol there's basically different types of blood lipids in the body, and cholesterol is one of them, and we'll talk about different types of cholesterol, but it is a key component to keeping the body healthy. Let's see. So when it comes to heart attacks, though, I'll touch on that a little bit. So calcium is what builds up in the arteries. You've probably seen this if you have hard water, right? Your faucet builds up with calcium, and that calcification can block water from coming out of your shower head. So in the same sense, that can happen in the body. However, vitamin K keeps your body from developing calcification. So foods that are really rich in vitamin K are often the foods we're told not to eat. Red meat, raw dairy, right? Don't touch those things. Well, now you're consuming cholesterol, but then you're not getting the vitamin K you need to keep that calcification and build-up from happening. So so then you're probably like, well, why is everyone telling us not to eat this stuff then, right? So in 1961, there was a man named Ansel Keys who is not my favorite person, but he had a very strong personality. He was very persistent, and he was trying to figure out the reason for heart attacks. So around this time, it's helpful to understand, and maybe you guys kind of got a glimpse of this over the last several years, and how our health and politics are very intertwined. So during this time, Dwight Eisenhower, as the president at the time, had a heart attack. So we're starting to see more heart attacks pop up, and research is trying to figure out what's causing them. Now, the studies and the circumstances failed to look at the circumstances around Eisenhower and see that he smoked 6 to 7 packs of cigarettes a day. So that probably had nothing to do with his heart attack. And he also had the most stressful job in the world, right? President of the United States, and very poor diet. And but what Ansel Keys did, because he wanted to be the one that solved this crisis for America, is he said he had 5,000 studies showing that cholesterol was directly linked to heart attacks. Now, and if you look inside someone's clogged arteries, you will find cholesterol. You will find it everywhere in the body. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the cause of it, but he said he had these studies that showed direct links. Well, without seeing those studies, the American Heart Association adopted his perspective. So what happened was we now are recommending low-fat diets. We're recommending seed oils because they lower cholesterol. Like, they actually do that, but is that what the body needs? No. So by the time the 1970s rolled around, all fat was considered bad. So we are living in a very, if you think 1970, that's when my mom was born, that's not that long ago. That's barely 2 generations of no fat. So prior to that, everyone else for the rest of history in all the world consumed high fat diets on a regular basis. So the government actually now says we no longer need to control our cholesterol. Very quietly, they have said that. They don't want to have to go back on, potential years of chaos that may have been created by that statement. So it actually doesn't matter how much cholesterol you consume, your body will regulate its own cholesterol. So there's only 3 macronutrients. You guys, if you work out, you probably are aware: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. So when we cut fat and protein, or have a low fat, low protein diet, what our body is left with is carbohydrates, and we crave those carbohydrates, and we only feel satisfied when we're eating those carbohydrates, which turn to fatty acid. And fatty acid is what causes you to gain weight and hold on to stubborn weight. And so it turns to sugar. So sugar and carbohydrates will cause you to gain weight. There's actually this indigenous tribe in Alaska who, it's freezing there. They don't have trees and green grass and, places for cows to roam and get grass-fed beef. So they primarily lived off of whale blubber and whale meat. And that's pretty much the only thing in their diet for generations. No one had any issues. As soon as supermarkets are introduced in processed foods and carbohydrates, that tribe and those people generationally started to gain weight, and as they began to eat less fat, they began to gain more weight. So there's definitely something to that. So that was a lot. Before I move on, so there's 3 key components that we need for healthy cells. Do we know what those are? Pop quiz. Salt, fat, protein. You passed the thing. Okay. So any questions or thoughts, or if you want to try to prove me wrong, that's totally fine too. Please do. Any thoughts on fat, salt, protein? Yeah.
What would be some examples of quality fat?
Quality fat, yeah, that's a great question. So butter is by far the most superior fat you can consume. Obviously there's different ranges of butter. I grew up eating margarine, and I thought that was butter, and it's not. Yeah. And so I grew up thinking I didn't like butter, and then my now husband, boyfriend at the time, was like, no, you have to have this butter. And then I was like, what? Your butter is so different than mine. So, there is a spectrum of butter. So, being budget friendly, buying the best quality butter that you can. But coconut oil, and so we'll talk a little bit about, or was I supposed to talk about that already? I'm about to, okay. The oils to avoid, but essentially you want to avoid, they call it the hateful 8. So corn oil, canola oil, cotton oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, rice oil, bran oil, and grapeseed oil. So tropical oils are actually still really good. So that's your coconut oil, olive oil, and avocado oil. Those are all good, healthy oils. You do have to be careful because some aren't good.
Can you run through those one more time?
Yeah, the hateful 8, yeah. Some of those oils aren't, olive oil doesn't do well when you cook it at high heat. So if your oil starts to smoke, that's an indication that it's breaking down the components in the oil and it's not good to consume. But so olive oil is good raw or cold in a dressing. But yeah, definitely butter, beef tallow, pork lard. When we cook bacon, I don't strain the grease and put it in a paper towel. We just eat it. Or if I cook ground beef, I'm not straining the fat. We're just going for it. And nobody in my household is fat, okay? So yeah, that's a great question. So the hateful 8 is corn, canola, cotton, safflower, sunflower, rice, bran, and grapeseed.
I meant cotton. Sorry, corn, canola, cotton, safflower.
Sunflower, rice, bran, grapeseed. And I will tell you that the hateful 8, this is what we would call vegetable oils, right? They're not really, most of them are not vegetables. They're in everything processed. It's so hard. If all you did is leave here and is I'm never eating the hateful 8 again, your health would change dramatically. But it's gonna be really hard because it's in everything. But I try to just keep it out of the house. My goal with it can be very overwhelming to try and make healthy choices. So my goal is at home, like I want it to be oasis, like clean air as much as possible, clean water, clean food. We're not toxic people, you know, because when we go outside, we can't control that environment. So control it in the house as much as possible, and then, you know, just pray that the Lord will cover the rest. Yeah, that's a great question. We love making homemade French fries and cooking them in beef tallow. It is like, that is what McDonald's used to do way back in the day, and why their fries were so delicious. I mean, way before our day. None of us probably, well, maybe there's a few in here who would know that, but probably not. You all are so young. So yeah, so if there's anything in this section that's interesting, just make a little note, maybe write down like just one thing that you're like, oh, I had not ever heard that or had considered that before. And then we'll kind of move on. So I do want to talk about aging. So what makes us age? So this is why I'm so excited to be doing this talk here at Salt and Light, because I feel like there's two components. There's toxicity and there's nutrient deficiency. So those two things together, scientists call that oxidative stress. So when our body is experiencing oxidative stress, we are aging, and eventually that is what causes us to die. So if we are able to be toxin-free and have nutrient-dense foods, we're actually going to look better, feel better, and people will actually talk about reversing the signs of ages. So some of the services that are here that will, we're going to talk some like immune boosting protocols, and I'll kind of get in depth on some of those services. And Brian didn't pay me to talk about this, but I just love them so much. People will say, like, I'll look at a picture from like 2 years ago before I was eating clean and before I was detoxing well, and like I look younger now than 2 years ago. And it's because of the oxidative stress. When our body is not experiencing oxidative stress, it's not breaking down and decaying as rapidly. So the hateful eight is what really gets will age you really fast. Okay, so now we'll shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the lines of defense. So there's 5 basic lines of defense that our immune system has. And understanding those lines are going to help you when you start to experience illness, or if you're like, oh shoot, I was just around somebody who was sick. It's like, here's the protocol. Here's what we're going to initiate so we don't get sick. So first is our skin and mucous membrane. So our skin is our largest organ. We are going to be absorbing things. That's why we're always like, wash your hands, right? It's also not breathing through our mouths. So when we are breathing through our mouth, we are now taking the function of the nose, and we're requiring the tonsils to do the job of the nose. And the tonsils, while they can filter some, are not as equipped as the nose is. And so we want to make sure that we are constantly mouth breathing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth when we come to protocols. But that's the first line of defense, is we're filtering bacteria through our nose and we're washing our hands. So that's like very basic. We all are grown-ups, should be able to wash your hands. And then the second is an inflammatory response. So this is usually around the time where you start to feel like, I might be getting sick. We start to notice like inflamed, maybe like sinus pressure. And so what this means is it's increased blood flow that allows for more white blood cells to travel to the infected area. So our head will often throb when our sinuses are full, because the body is sending more white blood cells to the infected area, which is why if you get like a cut or a scrape that's not cleaned out, it will start to have swelling in that area too, because your body's trying to send more white blood cells. So fun fact about sugar. So when you consume sugar, what happens to our white blood cells? It essentially puts them in a coma. So let's see, I think I breezed over my sugar facts here. Maybe I'm skipping ahead. Oh, okay, I'm gonna wait to tell you about sugar. Okay, I skipped ahead. So we want to make sure that we can help our body. So reducing inflammation may not necessarily be what you need to do in this moment. We often talk about inflammation as being really bad, and in some cases it is, right? If there's a traumatic brain injury, swelling in the brain, there's nowhere for the brain to go, we need to reduce the swelling. There are times when inflammation isn't as helpful, but it is helpful to understand why is our body being inflamed right now. And so typically it's a response to wanting to attack something that's going on, and so we can try to support instead of suppress what the body is doing. Especially when it comes to fevers and things like that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So first we have the skin and mucous membranes, then inflammatory response, and third is our lymphatic system. So we have lymph nodes that are strategically placed along circulation bottlenecks. So areas in the body, so you've probably noticed like swelling into your neck, like little like nodules. We have them all down our arms into here, and some into the breast tissue. These nodes have special white blood cells. So there's actually additional white blood cells that are stored in those lymph nodes. So when you're sick and the inflammation occurs, it's like, okay, we gotta rapid fire get those out, okay? And then there's a humoral response. So these next two are probably things that you're not noticing externally, but this is what's happening inside the body. So the body produces chemical defenders called antibodies. You've probably heard of those, right? And antigens. So if you think of antibodies and antigens as like a lock and a key. So every time we're exposed to something, or your body is creating these antigens, and then the antibodies that are going to go and unlock those antigens. So it's like, oh, okay, here's this antigen that's coming in, antibody, we're going to unlock that, and we know those always go together. And so it's creating this memory of like, we have done this before and we know exactly what pattern needs to occur in order to handle this infection again. And then over time, you don't even notice that you've come into contact with that because the body is able to handle it at a cellular level. So speaking of cellular response, so our T cells will directly attack and remember next time what they encountered. So first you have to encounter it, which was the original premise on vaccines, right? It was like, if we can introduce a small amount of this live bacteria, then the lock and key pattern will happen. The antibodies and the antigens will meet, and now there's a T cell response. We remember it for next time. That has kind of gotten a little out of control, and there's a lot more to that we don't need to touch, but that is the idea, is small amounts. You may have heard like, oh yeah, your parents or grandparents, we had a chickenpox party, right? It was like, let's just all get it done with and get it over with, and then now we don't have chickenpox anymore, right? It's that same idea. So now, any questions on lines of defense? Okay. So what disrupts our immune system? So the number one disruption of our immune system goes back to that first line of defense in our skin and mucous membrane. It's mouth breathing. So we're designed to take bacteria in through our nose. And so you might think, but I'm not a mouth breather, but you probably are at night. So especially if you were bottle fed or had a pacifier, anything that was pushing your tongue and keeping it from resting on the top of your mouth as a child created habits for your body to have your mouth open. So the soft palate in your mouth is supposed to be strong. It's supposed to be able to, without effort or thinking, keep the tongue on the roof of your mouth. However, because we're not eating like tough steak and like really hard bread and things that we're having to like rip and chew, and so our jaws, from a small age, what are we fed? We're given milk, and then very liquidy purees, and then less liquidy purees, and more purees, and bottles and pacifiers. So from the start, our jaws and our palate isn't as strong as it needs to be in order to support nose breathing. So when you're nose breathing, you can actually take in 18% more oxygen than when you're breathing through your mouth. So you're actually going to get improved sleep quality if you are breathing through your nose. So how do you keep yourself from breathing through your mouth when you're not conscious, you're not awake? So we have actually started mouth taping, much to my chagrin at night, because I have so many words, and as soon as I put the tape on, I'm like, well, all my words are done for the night. Great. I'm sure my husband loves it. He's probably getting really good sleep since I started mouth taping. But you can use just a small piece of medical grade tape. Like, you don't have to cover your whole mouth. That's very stressful for people. Like, you can still drink through a straw if you need to. But you'll probably find that you don't actually get thirsty at night because you're not drying out your mouth, breathing through your mouth. And then you're going to take that pressure off of your immune system. So if your tonsils are constantly having to filter the bacteria that should have gone through the nose and should have stopped there, you're going to be having this elevated immune response. And so it's more likely that you will get sick more often. So I highly recommend mouth taping. My husband likes a brand called Hostage Tape just because it's cool branding and marketing. And so that's what we've bought. And then I just cut the strips in half so I can still drink at night if I need to. But medical tape works well too. Okay, so the next thing that disrupts our diets is the sugar and seed oils. So now I'll go on my tirade on sugar. So this is very interesting. The average American consumes 152 pounds of sugar and about 133 pounds of flour, which convert to sugar annually. Annually, not in a lifetime, okay? So by the time a child is 7, they will have consumed more sugar than someone would have in their entire lifetime 100 years ago. 7, like that's not very old. So our effectiveness of our white blood cells, which are the immune cells that fight infection, decreased by 50% for 1 to 2 hours after eating sugar, and it may last up to 5 hours depending on how much sugar you consume. So essentially what that does is it puts your white blood cells into a coma. So you think you go to a birthday party and there's a jumper and snotty kids and cupcakes and everybody's touching everything and the kid just blew out the candles, we're all eating that cake. And now 50% of your white blood cells are now immobilized for the next 5 hours, up to the next 5 hours. So my kids know I'm constantly like, no sugar, I don't want you to get sick. No sugar, I don't want you to get sick. But it is a real thing. So being mindful of the amount of sugar you're consuming, when and where you're consuming sugar. So you want to shoot for less than 25 grams of sugar a day. And that's really hard because that's like 1 soda or, you know, there's definitely more of that in like a dessert if you go out to eat, you know. So you want to pick your sugar wisely. The next thing that disrupts our immune system is our gut health. So 85% of our immune system is in our gut. So a healthy person has 6 pounds of good bacteria in their gut. That's a lot. So if that's where our immune cells are developing and growing and thriving, just like we talked about those cells, we want healthy cells that are like duplicating. We need that healthy microbiome. And so we want a diet that's rich in cultured foods, that's rich in raw foods, raw dairy, raw milk. We'll talk about that a little bit. We like kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut. Like I went on like a pickling like frenzy, and I was like Brussels sprouts, everything. I was like, if it can be. We do a lot of fermented garlic honey. So incorporating that in your daily life as much as possible is really helpful. So it's interesting, you think of like a traditional diet would have been like all your food, your meat, you're eating mostly meat, a little bit of vegetables, all covered in gravy, which is made out of all of the drippings and the fat that makes your food more digestible. You're covering that, and then probably some sort of fermented or jarred or canned something because we have to make it last. We don't have a refrigerator, so we're going to eat that on the side. Even your jam would have been preserved and had that fermentation in it. And so without even knowing it, like generations before was eating really, really healthy by just basically eating real food and making the most of their dollar, right? They're just making it stretch and they're using everything. Kind of like we were meant to do that. Another thing that disrupts our immune system is stress. So there is a difference between short-term and long-term stress, and there are some advantages to short-term stress actually boosting the immune system. So if you guys haven't had a chance yet to walk around and see all the fun things, there's actually cold plunge here, which has the ability to boost your immune system because it prompts a short-term stress response. So it can actually temporarily, being under stress can increase the number of white blood cells and production of cytokines, So these are proteins that signal to the body to respond to injury and infection. Remember protein, how important protein is, okay? So this can help your body fight infection and heal wounds. So it'll also help like muscle recovery, that sort of thing. It's the same process as temporary stress. However, so then what it does is it can activate the sympathetic nervous system. So we have a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic is when your body is not stressed and it's in a state of relaxation. Our sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight response. Adrenaline is flowing, lots of cortisol's hormone is being produced, and that fight or flight, if we're in that for a long period of time, it's going to actually impact our hypothalamus, which is the back part of your brain, and it's going to cause us to release more cortisol and more hormones that basically, in order to maintain that level of cortisol, your body is going to start pulling hormones from every which direction. So it's going to say, if we're in fight or flight, you don't need to be well right now. We're focusing on survival. You don't need to have children right now. We're focusing on survival. So it's going to take your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone. It's going to take your melatonin. You don't need to sleep. We're going to take that hormone too. We are trying to survive. And so if you are experiencing stress, a heavy workload, or small children, you're not sleeping, that sort of thing, increasing your fat, salt, and protein is going to help your body be able to stave off infection, and it's going to help support your adrenals. So when we have long-term stress, however, that's a problem. So your body is on overdrive and it doesn't have time to recover. So there's immune suppression. So chronic stress can suppress our immune system by increasing cortisol levels that make you more susceptible to infection. So it can alter the balance of cytokines, which lead to low-grade inflammation. So if we have that low-grade inflammation all day long, every day, your body's not getting a break. And so every little illness you encounter is going to catch you. It also can actually make you susceptible to autoimmune disorders and to cancer. So stress, there are actually studies though, they're starting to compare drug addicts to chronically stressed people, and the chronically stressed people are more unhealthy than the drug addicts. So that was a little wake-up call for me. Just let it go, right? Another thing that disrupts our immune system, okay, so we have mouth breathing, our diets, gut health, stress, and then poor sleep. So often what's causing stress in our immune system is keeping us from sleeping. So it's very correlated, right? So we do need to evaluate our sleep patterns though. So we're trying to handle our stress, but there may be some other things that we're doing outside of stress that are causing us to not sleep well. So watching TV before bed, falling to sleep watching TV, right? Those blue lights, those are disrupting our circadian rhythm. So we want, if it's dark outside, the lighting in your house should be warm glow. We should not have these bright fluorescent lights. So dim the lights, let your body know it is actually nighttime. So if you're like me and you're like, well, I'm just not gonna give up watching TV before bed, so what are you gonna do? So you can get blue light glasses that helps filter out the blue light. They actually have light bulbs that help filter blue light. So we put all the lamps in our bedroom, have these blue light filters on them that can help. Also making sure when you are asleep that there aren't any small lights. So sometimes we have things plugged in that have little lights here or there. When you're going through your different sleep cycles, every 45 minutes or so, you're kind of coming out of a deeper sleep and waking up, and your body will catch the light that when you first turned off the light, you didn't notice was there, but now all of a sudden seems to be illuminating the whole room. So checking for those, I've got like little band-aids and tape over all the little things. Turning off your Wi-Fi at night, so that those are radio waves, right? And those activate your brain. And so either having the Wi-Fi like in the garage far away, have it on a timer to turn off during like, midnight to 6 or something like that, can be really helpful. The same as like, cellular data or keeping your phones far from your head. Those radio waves are stimulating brain activity, and it's hard for your body to actually rest. This seems kind of weird, and I have a hard time doing it, but sleeping with socks on actually helps regulate your body's temperature. I will have a bad night of sleep before I sleep with socks on, so I haven't got to that point yet. But it actually is supposed to help you regulate your body temperature, and it keeps heat from escaping. And then avoiding sugar and alcohol several hours before bed, at least 3 hours before bed, because it's going to spike your blood sugar, and then you're going to crash. And so having a high protein, high fat snack before bed may help offset that as well. And then no mouth breathing. You want to be taping your mouth shut. So they do say that after 2 to 3 months of mouth taping, usually the palate is strong enough to not need it anymore, and you could probably sleep all night without mouth breathing. So I think everyone's probably a little different, but definitely beats like sleeping with one of those like Darth Vader CPAP machines that make it hard to roll over and sleep comfortably. Okay, so next we will talk about naturally boosting our immune system. So we know our lines of defense, there's a handful of things that disrupt our immune system. Some of those things are in our control, a lot of them are, some are not. But now we can talk about how to naturally boost our immune system. So everything we do needs to be to support the function that's happening, not to replace it. So a lot of times in like traditional Western medicine, we are stopping the fever, or we're killing the bacteria, we're coming in and we're taking over what the body is doing. So on the other hand, a more natural, holistic approach is to say, what is the body doing? How can we come alongside that? So for example, if you have a fever, we've never given our children anything to reduce their fevers. We have tried to help them be more comfortable. So like we are sleeping with socks on to help regulate our body temperature. If we put on cold, wet socks, that's going to draw the heat from the head, and it's going to say warm up the feet. So now we haven't reduced the fever, but we're moving the heat that's making them uncomfortable from their head to their feet. And we're actually going to keep them dressed warmly. Not so much that, you know, it doesn't have to be a sauna and they're sweating it out, but a lot of times when we have a fever, we think reduce the fever, cool them off. And the body says, oh my gosh, I'm trying so hard to heat you up right now to kill this infection. And so now the fever is going to increase, and you're going to actually be hotter and more uncomfortable than if you were kept warm and cozy and hydrated, drinking warm teas, help the body do what it's already trying to do. So if you're afraid of high temperatures, in hospitals, they will increase patients' temperatures up to 108 to like kill cancer cells. So like I've never ever even heard of anyone getting 108 fever naturally. But just so you know, like that's, like if you're, especially a young child has 103, 104, like that is like really sad, but it actually isn't as dangerous as we, I think, have made it out to be. And sometimes you end up having the fever for longer when you're suppressing it. Whereas when you're supporting the fever, we're getting over that faster. So one things you can do, and in a few minutes, I really want this talk to be practical. We'll take some time to kind of jot out like, okay, here's all the information. What is one or two things that I'm like, I know I can implement this right away. So one of the things you can do in those areas is evaluate your diet, your exercise, and your supplementing. And now supplementing doesn't necessarily mean all these vitamins you're taking. Supplementing means in addition to. So sometimes when I joke about taking my vitamin D supplement when I come to Salt and Light, like I'm not actually taking anything, but I'm sitting in a sunbed and I'm absorbing that extra vitamin D that I'm not getting from being outside. So I'm supplementing that. So sometimes that is like, I need to supplement with this routine or this specific food. It could be an actual vitamin that you're taking. But we want to make sure we're taking whole food supplements. So if they're synthetically derived and they're not coming from plants or animals, then your body's probably not processing it. It's not processing it. It will just secrete it through your urine. A lot of times if you take your vitamins and you're peeing like bright colors, that's like, it looks like Gatorade, that's a good sign that you're not getting, you're not absorbing that. So, and it could be that you are absorbing some and it's kicking out the extra, so you might not need to take as much. So you're like, I know I'm taking really good supplements, and you might need to evaluate how much you're taking. You might not need to supplement as much. And now if we have good routines and we're evaluating that oxidative stress, right, our toxicity and our nutrition, we'll find that we actually need to supplement less. We don't have to lean on supplementing as much if our diet is really rich and we're not toxic. Exercising, so evaluating, are you moving every day? Are you fueling your body with what it needs to maintain the type of exercise that you're doing? Are you recovering well, which is why I really love the sauna and the cold plunge. You can put your body in a state of chronic stress if you're working out too much and not nourishing your body that you need with what it needs, because it thinks, oh my gosh, we are preparing for this fight or flight or die, and like we're just going to keep going, and we're not actually having real rest and recovery. Really listening to your body, taking it easy, especially after you have been sick. Don't just like blast back into your normal workout routine. And sometimes it's really hard to work out, especially if you have young kids or a busy schedule. So I always just try to do like small things like park far away in the parking lot and just walk a little further. Things like that you can incorporate into your day that gets you moving. Actually does have benefit. You don't need to having these like power like CrossFit workouts every day to actually keep your body healthy. And then evaluate whether you have enough salt, fat, or protein in your diet. Evaluate how much processed sugar and processed foods you're consuming in a day, or even do a week, maybe like a food journal. Are you drinking enough water? So you should have half your body weight in water in ounces a day. Evaluate the source of your water. Bottled water is essentially tap water that's full of microplastics from the plastic it's sitting in. So as much as possible, you want to be drinking really clean filtered water. And then, are you eating a regular amount of fermented and cultured foods? So those are kind of the ways you can just think naturally. And then I also have some just kind of regular immune boosting protocols that we just kind of have in our daily routine. And then we'll talk about what to do when you actually like get sick, because we're going to want to increase and boost those protocols, and then there's some additional support we can add in when we get sick. But on a regular basis, after you've evaluated your diet, your exercise, your supplementing, I'm so sorry, this is like drinking from a fire hydrant. After you've evaluated all of those things, your diet, exercise, and supplementing, you can also think through what else can I be doing. So part of my immune boosting routines are on a regular basis, mouth taping, dry brushing. So this here is, it's just like, I think it's like boar hair bristle, like a dry brush. So before you go in the shower, before you can bring it with you, before you go in the sauna, this is gonna help that lymphatic stage of your line of defense. And so the lymphatic system, in order for it to be stimulated, it doesn't need much. And so just coming along, brushing in circular motions towards the heart, you're always brushing towards the heart, right? That is going to open up the lymphatic system. It actually opens up your pores. It's gonna allow you to detox better before the sauna. And so you can do this before the shower. But this is just a helpful way to make sure that there's, you know, we talked about the lymphatic system being kind of like where the bottlenecks are, making sure there's nothing stagnant and everything's draining. Can be really helpful. Doing it, before a shower, before a sauna would probably help maximize that. Hydration is really key. Evaluating your sleep routines. And then vitamin D, it honestly shouldn't be considered a vitamin, like called a vitamin, because of, like, it's just the precursor to everything that we need it so much. So Crucial 4 is a really great brand. These are vitamin D drops. They taste like peppermint. You can give them to your kids. You don't have to worry about pills to swallow. Doing a couple of these every day. And then in addition, I try to get at least once a week to the sunbend to make sure that I'm getting the vitamin D that my body needs. It's very, very important, especially too if you're trying to regulate your hormones. In addition to not getting sick, this is key. I'm also consuming cultured and fermented foods on a regular basis to boost my gut health. And then consuming collagen. So collagen accounts for 30% of the protein in your body. It creates structure and support in the body. And so it contains all of these amino acids, which are the building blocks for good cells. So every day I am kickstarting my metabolism with in my tea, I'm having butter, heavy cream, and collagen in my tea every morning. Because you can mix that in your protein smoothies or, you know, get it in other ways, but collagen is going to help keep you from getting sick. And then at least once a week, I try to get into the infrared sauna and the cold plunge. Now this is my infrared light spiel, so we'll see if I nail it on this one. Infrared light it's an invisible light, but it's absorbed through the photoreceptors in your cells. And once absorbed, that light energy kind of kickstarts a series of metabolic events inside your body, triggering a lot of natural processes in the body on a very cellular level. So this is a list of some of the things that it can help with. Cellular growth and repair. So infrared light improves the mitochondrial cells, which help new muscles and tissue grow and repair. So I actually have seen a lot of benefit from a lot of scar tissue I had in my back from a previous car accident, and I've felt the benefits of not being in pain anymore, which is amazing. It also helps with detoxification. So unlike wet saunas that are like steam saunas that are heating you from the outside in, causing you to sweat, these are heating you from the inside out. And so that increases your core body temperature, not by much, probably similar to what you would have at like a workout, like if you're working out pretty hard. And that's going to help detoxify you, which is what we want, right? We don't want oxidative stress. That's what's going to age you. So even if you're eating really, really well, if you're still exposed to toxins, and you're not detoxing, then you're going to have that oxidative stress. And you're going to see those signs of aging. Blood circulation, so we know that the reason we need the protein is to increase that blood circulation. So the infrared light will improve our blood circulation, which helps deliver oxygen and nutrients to damaged tissue. And it can also help reduce inflammation. So we know if we're chronically stressed, we're chronically inflamed, right? So if we're reducing that inflammation, that's going to help our immune system. And then cell viability. So it can also promote cell viability and growth factors. So now there's not a lot of studies that I've found, but it's really interesting. People are starting to see that infrared and red light are actually really good uses for cancer therapy and brain disorders. And so it's amazing what light can do, right? That's the catchphrase. And then also part of my regular immune boosting, I don't know why it's so hard to say immune and boosting in the same sentence, is regular chiropractic care. So our family goes to a chiropractor twice a month. And this is because your nervous system is responsible for all the other things that are happening in your body. And so when those connections are not being able to it's like sitting in traffic, right? You'd rather be on the freeway and nobody's on the freeway and you can just drive. But if you're sitting in traffic, you're not getting to where you need to be. A lot of times that's what's happening. And so I've found that our regular chiropractic care has helped keep our bodies in alignment and we're not getting sick as often. My kids have also never had ear infections, and I think a lot of that is because that access, like their spinal access at the top, often will pinch the eustachian tubes in the ear and make it hard for fluid to drain. And so I think them being able to keep those pathways open has been really beneficial. So that's kind of like my regular, this is just how I stay healthy. Now, if I feel like I'm getting sick or I'm exposed to someone who's getting sick, I have a lot of different protocols that I like to implement. And some that I don't like to implement, but I do it anyway. As I looked at this neti pot. Sometimes I would rather be sick than do this, so I was gonna. So if it's a head cold, sore throat, fever kind of cold, I like to play this game of okay, if you were the stranded on a desert island and you could only bring 2 vitamins or supplements with you, what would you bring? So if I could only bring 2 things, I would bring colloidal silver and activated charcoal. So I'm going to tell you why. So you can get it in a nasal spray. You can also get it just in its liquid form. Now, this has already been diluted, sovereign silver. So it's it's 10 parts per million. That's what ppm stands for. And so it's clear. So you can buy silver, and if it's pure colloidal, I don't know, tomato, silver, then it's going to be like an amber color. So that you would not want to just ingest directly. But if it's clear, then it's already been diluted. And so you can use this as like a sinus spray. Like if you start to feel any sort of sinus pressure, you can use that. If I'm starting to feel a sore throat, we will gargle it. If we have a cough, I have like a nebulizer machine, and we will put it in there, and it will help aerosolize it and get it into the lungs. Which is, we have some amazing salt rooms in here that do the same thing. They make the salt particles so small that you can inhale it and get it into the lungs. But the silver is amazing. We will use it any eye infections. I'll put it right in the eye. It stings a little bit, mostly because it's cold. It's not, if it's diluted, it's not going to be bad in your eyes. Ear infections or earaches, you can put it in the ear, or any wounds that are open and not healing very well. Like this is like magic. So that is my go-to for that. Stomach bugs, my least favorite kind of sickness. I will use activated charcoal. You can get it in capsule form. This is organic coconut activated charcoal. And anytime I'm feeling gross, I keep it in the car in case we eat out and something doesn't agree with me. Like any stomach, anything I feel slightly weird or heard someone threw up, or just like charcoal all around. This is my mother-in-law. She knows. I'm always, take your charcoal. I'll knock on her door. We were with someone who had the flu. Do you want some charcoal? And I'm telling you, like, I don't throw up. I don't get sick because of this. Or if it is like, if it's already started and you're like, oh, we're going down, take it anyway, because what it does is it binds to and absorbs toxins, and you're gonna get over it faster. It's gonna collect everything up, and you might only throw up one time versus like all night long. So if kids can't take pills, you can mix it in like juice, like grape juice or even water. However, once it's exposed to liquid, it starts binding to stuff. So it's not like you want to just like, oh, sip your juice with charcoal. It's like we're taking a shot of charcoal, get it down as soon as I open the capsule type of thing. Usually I'll just open in my daughter's mouth, I'll just open the capsule in her mouth, and then she'll just drink water. That way it's like activating in her mouth right away. It's also great if your kids get into something that they're like not supposed to, or like any medication or anything like that. Like this is what they do in the hospitals if someone overdoses, but they just pump their stomachs with like high volumes of charcoal. So I always have the charcoal on hand. And then this is a neti pot. And so the idea is you would use like distilled or filtered water. It's less uncomfortable if the water is slightly warm, but essentially you would put it through one side and then it would like come up and drain out the other, and I look like a hot mess over the sink when I do it, and it's horrible and I hate it, but I did want to put this out there in case someone would like to do that. My husband just like snorts water in the shower. Like, I don't know how he can do that. Like, oh, it just burns the nose so bad. But neti pot will help you catch it quickly. Like we want to, right? We're supporting what the body's already doing. So if we know the first line of defense is those mucous membranes, let's catch it and kill it at the mucous membranes, so we don't actually have to get like really sick, which is what the nasal spray will do, the neti pot, the silver, and gargling it with the tonsils. We want to catch that quickly at that first line of defense. Let's see. And elderberry syrup is great. Or they sell elderberry gummies. You just have to be careful that there's not added sugar to it. Or sometimes the gummies, it's like, well, it's like I'm giving my kids Sour Patch Kids. Like, that's not actually, you know, if it's what you're trying to do is offsetting what you're doing by immobilizing your white blood cells, then that elderberry is probably not going to be the best for you, right? You can buy dry elderberries and make your own syrup. I kind of make it more just like a strong tea with honey. That works great. I'll double up our vitamin D. So whatever, if I'm doing 2 drops, I'll do 4, and until I feel like we're in the clear. And then I'm also going to increase our fat, salt, and protein. And one of the best ways to do that is with homemade bone broth. And so on your little sheet there, I also have a recipe for how I make our bone broth. And it's really easy, and you just do it with scraps, and I keep Ziploc bags in the freezer. Whenever I cut off the ends of onions or the ends of carrots and celery, I just save all the scraps. And then when I have enough for broth, I make a big pot of broth, and it's going to be really high in collagen and fat, and we always salt it, and it's a good source of protein, and it's just very comforting when you don't feel good. So that's always my go-to when we're sick. Turmeric and ginger are really great anti-inflammatories. So if you're really feeling like, okay, I want to come along and support what the body's doing, but I'm so uncomfortable I can't sleep, it's so much inflammation, then we can help reduce that inflammation to a point where we're comfortable, and turmeric and ginger is great for that. And then also I try to avoid, when we're sick, anything that's iced or very cold. So you want hot or warm beverages and meals only. When we drink cold water, in order for our body to use it, it has to warm it up, and so it's not energy efficient. So when our body's trying to focus on healing, we want to support it and come alongside it. So if we're drinking iced beverage and now we have to, heat up all this water in order to use it, we've just wasted healing energy on warming water energy, when we can do that, in a kettle, or room temperature is fine. Just avoiding ice I found to be really helpful. And then another thing that our family does is we actually avoid antibiotics at all costs. And so if you think of kind of like a war analogy, is like you could go in stealthily and you could take out the enemy, very targeted, right? Stomach bug, I'm taking the charcoal. Or you could go in and you can drop a grenade, and you probably will get the result that you want, like enemy is done. However, the collateral damage of dropping a grenade is going to be much higher than a very tactical approach of going in targeted and specific. And so for our family, it's like there may be a time and a place where we need to drop a grenade. That has not happened yet. My children have never had antibiotics, and my husband and I have not had antibiotics in the last 15 years. So I'm not saying that it would be like completely off the table, but there are usually always a very targeted approach we can take where we're not going to need to wipe out everything else, because antibiotics cannot discriminate between good and bad bacteria. So if you're doing all this stuff to really boost your immune system and eat healthy and feel good, and then you get sick and you take antibiotics, now you are looking at 6 months to a year to rebuild that gut flora. And then now your body is, those basic lines of defense are all hindered, because you're having to rebuild and also try and not get sick. Another really great immune boosting protocol is raw dairy. So we will consume actually extra dairy, raw dairy, if we're feeling sick. And I don't know if any of you ever like sang or did choir, you were always like, you can't have milk before you sing, right? It'll make you all mucusy. And that's actually true. Pasteurized milk will do that. It creates an immune response. So it's that mucus membrane, it's that first line of defense. So pasteurized milk will change the proteins in the milk so much that our body considers them foreign. And so it's actually the number one like allergy for children is pasteurized milk, because we've changed the composition so much the body cannot recognize it. And so you will get more mucusy if you have pasteurized dairy versus traditional raw dairy. But it is so full of all of the building blocks and immune boosting and like the bacteria that we want to be exposed to build those lock and key antigen antibody connections on a really good level. And I can go on a whole situation of why we don't have raw milk in stores and all that, but if you're curious about raw milk and you would be interested, we can chat more about that. But I don't know, it's so hard to give all the good information and not be thoroughly overwhelming. Okay.
Could you go down that rabbit hole for just a second? I know.
Sure. Yeah. Like, so why can't we just get raw milk, and why is it always pasteurized? Sure. Okay. So in so let's go back like 1600s, right? So we've got people who have basically like micro dairies, right? Everybody would have, 1 or 2 cows, and it wouldn't be super feasible to like, we're not eating the grass, and there's rain, and there's all these things that are coming together that are allowing this cow to exist. But if we eat the cow, then it's like a one and done situation. So we've actually figured out like, oh, this milk actually produces like what we need. We have the rain, we have the grass, we keep this cow happy, it has space, everybody's got, space. Well, by the time the 1800 comes, people have moved closer and closer and closer to the city, and they're living in more densely populated areas. But they're bringing their cows with them because we need our milk, right? And so now you have everybody in these areas that are densely populated, where, we're not taking care of the animals in the same way. They're not getting sunshine, they're not getting grass. In fact, actually rum distilleries were a big thing, and the grains that were used to produce rum, that was like leftover, were being fed to the cows. So it's like not good food, it's not what they need. We have tuberculosis is spreading like crazy, and it's the unwealthy, lower income, impoverished, sick people that are milking the cows. We're not washing our hands. And now, like at that point, so many people were dying from so many things because we just didn't understand germs and hygiene. Like plumbing and washing our hands solved almost all of our illnesses. But at that time, like 50% of kids were dying from drinking milk. So like, I'm not drinking that milk either. Like if that were the case, right? Like that makes sense. So then we have this idea of pasteurization gets developed. We don't really understand a lot about germs. And so at this point, what we do understand is germs are bad. All germs are bad. We don't know that there's good bacteria, bad bacteria. So now we're starting to pasteurize our milk, and we realize, if we heat this up on the stove and we give it to our children, they're not getting sick and they're not dying, but we're also very hungry and starving. So we're gonna do that so that way we have what we need. And so we've only had pasteurization for about 100 years. So all before then, everyone has been drinking raw dairy. We got cheese because we're like, how do we save our milk? Cheese is old milk. And so it's not pasteurized. We do have pasteurized cheese now. But it's very interesting. And so what we've lost is that we've tried to, with urbanization, industrial revolution, it's like we've tried to have our cake and eat it too. It's like you can't actually have the benefits of farm life and city life coexisting in the same moment unless you buy your raw milk from an Amish farm and you don't have to do the work yourself, which is what we do. But like we could not produce the milk that Amish farm is producing here in Riverside in its parking lot, which is what they were trying to do. But they didn't understand germs enough to understand the consequences of what they were doing. And so then it just, it becomes this is what we've always done, and this is what we always do. But what pasteurization does allow is it allows for a lot of cows to be in a very small space together, and it doesn't matter what illnesses they get because we're gonna heat this up to 500 and something, 700 degrees, hotter than you could possibly heat milk on the stove in your house, and we're gonna kill everything. So it allows for like more mass production. But I do think there's a shift. I think people are starting to become more aware that like our food is not what it once was, and stuff is lacking. So yeah, raw milk is like kids with allergies, their allergies and eczema is going away from drinking raw milk. Like it has such great like healing powers. Yeah.
Also, adults who've been lactose intolerant their entire 65 years are no longer lactose intolerant.
Yes, because it's not the lactose; it's the change in the proteins. Like it's not milk that you're drinking anymore. And then of course they take all the fat out of it, so then you're drinking like 2%, which is like, that's water. Why are you paying this much for water? I don't know.
No, that's interesting that milk, like throughout history was always considered this super nutritious thing, and then there's like this one small moment in time where we all of a sudden, we're scared of it. It's like, it's weird. You think because of industrialization that people would have been more sophisticated and stuff, and all of a sudden it becomes unhealthy during that time. So that's interesting. That's an interesting insight. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so what I would love to do is just, if anyone would like to, you don't have to, but just share some insights or some things you're thinking, or like, okay, my hope is that like some of these protocols are like, it's actually not that difficult to add a pinch of salt to my water, or you won't taste it. Any thoughts or takeaways? And then I have a little experience. I want you guys to taste my adrenal cocktail. but it's not a real cocktail. So don't worry.
Aw.
I know.
I'm a like legitimate caffeine addict. Is high doses of caffeine? Is there any correlation to like bad immunity or anything like that, or is
Suppressing
that?
your immune system. Oh, there's so much conflicting information out there on that. I mean, if you're drinking it to the point where it's affecting your sleep, then I would say yes.
Or adrenal.
Yeah. It can cause adrenal fatigue. But what I'm going to share with you now, so if you're inclined to have that second cup of coffee in the afternoon, this adrenal cocktail that I have is pretty amazing. It's super easy to make. It's just pulp-free orange juice. The pulp is hard to digest. You want pulp-free orange juice, plain coconut water, and then sea salt. So on my little paper I have for you, I have the little like ratios that I do, and it will be a salty beverage. But you can have a glass of this in the afternoon, and it really does it's a good pick me up and for your adrenals. So I'll just be pouring this right in front of the camera. So.
Yeah, we're gonna put this on our YouTube. So if you guys want to go back and I'm gonna go back to that list of the Hateful Eight so I can get them all.
I know. That's actually one of the ones I was trying to cram so much information on one sheet of paper. That's one thing I didn't put on there. So if you need those, I can say them again. I could try to say it from memory. Can anyone say it from memory? Corn, canola, cotton. Yes, there's 3 C's, 2 S, sunflower, safflower. That's not it. Grapeseed, rice, and was it bran?
Oh,
No.
bran, that's the one I need.
There you go.
Okay.
And no granules at all.
Yeah. And then you said what causes aging is oxidative stress, some kind of toxicity, and
Yes.
nutrition.
Yep.
So what was the first, what type did you say?
Just toxins.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
toxins.
Yes.
So you don't like nutrients.
Yeah. Okay. Would you ladies like to help me hand these out?
Question.
Yeah.
So I've read conflicting reports on the sugars in food, and of course I know kids eat their apples and nervous and stuff.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that as far as does the natural sweetness, sugar in fruit have detrimental effect on the body, like illness or whatever? So
Yes. So that's a good question. Like, we're trying not to have too much sugar. Does the sugar in fruit put our blood cells in the same coma as like processed sugar? So to some degree, how many more do we need? You ladies want to try some? To some degree, yes. So I think so this is where we get in the weeds. So there are some things like, are vegetables good for you or bad for you? Well, it depends. Like, when are they harvested? What is sprayed on them? Like, are they being cooked so that the things that are hard to absorb and like eat are, absorbable? Like, it's a big rabbit hole. But I think in a nutshell, like, I think if it is actual whole real foods, then it's okay. Now, if your diet is we're just eating bananas and apples all day, which is what my kids would like to do, well, that's a problem because we're not getting the fat, protein, and salt, right? So I think, I don't know, I think I used to be like a very crazy, like, no sugar whatsoever, including fruit and all of the things. And like, I realized, like, I'm like gonna chill out on the fruit just a little bit. And I think that has, like, I'm less stressed, which I think is better for me. So, I don't know. Yeah.
So I don't know my sheet in front of me. What's in this drink again?
Okay, so it's an adrenal cocktail. So it's equal parts coconut water to plain orange juice, pulp-free orange juice, and then sea salt. So I remember it like half a cup, half a teaspoon. So, yeah, I can get you guys this. But in the afternoon, that might give you the pick-me-up you need to not have a second cup of coffee, is to have a glass of that.
Fourth energy drink. Is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. Yeah. Aaron will drink it before going to the gym or like working out. Just give a stack of those back. Yeah. You know, some of these kind of got messed up in printing, sorry. But if it's hard to read, you could just ask me and I'll get it for you.
Do you have the brands for like the silver charcoal drops?
Oh, sure, yeah. So the silver that I like is Sovereign Silver. And then this nasal spray, this one is, I don't know.
Are those on Amazon? I think they are.
Yeah. Fire Water Start. This is not a good brand. I should reach out to them. I should fix this. Fire Water Star Health Supplements.
Charcoal is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's like,
Yeah, I've got that.
Well, it's a good
I've got it
brand,
off
but not good
Amazon.
branding.
yes,
There we
it's a
go.
good brand. Branding, not so great. And then Crucial 4, you can actually get collagen here at Salt and Light from with the Crucial 4. It's really good.
And what's the difference between the two that you have here? Like one's a nasal spray and one's a drop that you
Yeah.
put in the mouth?
Yeah, so it's got like a big drop right there. So we'll just do, I mean, it tells you the amount, but we'll just do like 3 or 4. Swallow it.
And then for like congestion or whatever, you use the silver?
Yep.
Nasal spray, is that what you do?
Nasal spray, or we'll do it in the nebulizer. So instead of like a
Okay.
breathing treatment, like you can buy just like one of those basic nebulizers, like $30 on
Yeah.
Amazon, and we'll do like a breathing treatment with the silver.
Oh, okay.
Or we'll come here to the silver.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out when to use which one. So like use
Yeah,
both of
yeah,
them at the same time? The drops
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
silver?
Oh yeah.
okay.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to catch it at that like first line, so I'm
Oh,
like,
we don't even have any.
I'm lining up all the kids, like get your stuff, like you know, your nose, your mouth, everywhere, you know. Yeah,
Is
straight
vitamin D something you give your kids all the time, or is it just mainly when they're starting to feel sick?
So the summer not as much. I feel like we're outside a lot. We're getting a lot of sunshine. But the winter more often, especially if it's like we're having like lots of parties, lots of sugar. Like basically, I try to not lean heavy on having to supplement all the time, just to be like more budget friendly and just be more conscious. I think in the same way that people lean too heavily on sunscreen and that's why they get like sun damage is because they're like, oh, I have this sunscreen on, I can be in the sun all day long every day. And it's like, no, you can't. So like, I don't want to lean too heavily on supplements and then like not actually be mindful of what we're eating and our like lifestyle choices. So typically I will, if I know like, okay, we've been around, a lot of people are sick or something coming up that I'm like, I don't want to miss this thing. Like let's extra supplements leading up to it. And then definitely more often in the winter, but it's not like hardcore every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and some people do, but I
saw an interesting study on like that, or it was like a video guy on Instagram. One of my buddies sent it to me, but how sunscreen, people think it's extremely healthy for you, but this guy is basically saying that he never puts sunscreen on, and how it showed people like through a UV lens putting on sunscreen, and it looks like you're putting black tar all over the
I've
face,
seen that, yeah.
and they're just covering themselves. And basically, the idea was he was talking about was that your body is the only thing that can actually excrete toxins. And so when you're just like sealing it all up with the sunscreen,
Yeah.
it's like you're not allowing your body to sweat it out. It's just like, so it's
And that's
interesting
when you
what
don't
he
have
said.
like a toxic one that has carcinogens.
Yeah,
then
right,
it
right.
causing cancer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we had almost no cases of skin cancer until sunscreen.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're so toxic that you're just baking in chemicals
Oh, my
you're just baking it into your skin. Yeah. And then you're also like, you're in the sun longer than you would be. Like, if you don't have sunscreen, you actually have to pay attention to how long you're in the sun.
Yeah.
And like, you have to build up to it. Whereas if you have sunscreen on, you're like, oh, I can go to the beach for 7 hours.
Yeah.
No, that's not good for your skin, you know?
No, for sure.
That's really interesting, yeah.
And one of the things we talk about amongst our staff here a lot in regards to sun exposure is because you get people that ask about melanomas and things like that. And it's just like you look at any of the data around that, it's like melanomas are almost always developed in areas that don't see the sun, and they're not for people that like get sunshine and sunbeds. There are people that like the incidence of skin cancers and melanomas are a lot less in outdoor workers, like office workers. So there seems to be this like relationship with when you do go in the sun, you're like, yeah, you're sunscreened up and then you're getting overexposed. It's like this chronic overexposure that's happening, as opposed to that's just kind of part of your life and integrated into it. So.
Well, and your skin's your largest organ. So, you know, when we take in something that's toxic, like there's actually some processes that we have inside the body that can help absorb the toxins. We have our liver, we have our kidneys, we have our gallbladder, like that's working all together to help get rid of toxins. And it might be too much where we can't, you know, handle all of it. But your skin, there is no like filtration. Like whatever you're absorbing into your skin is going straight into your bloodstream. And so sometimes it can be worse what we're putting on our skin than what we're putting in our body. So like really like, and that can really impact like your endocrine system, which is responsible for like hormone production and like, yeah. When our bodies are weighted down, it's hard to stay healthy.
I guess this is more of like a theoretical question, and yeah, I mean, whether you have a precise answer or not. Do you think if you could control your diet, your inputs, your nutrient levels, your toxicity, all that stuff, if you had perfect control over that, do you think the amount of viral load you get exposed to match? Like, could you get just like an insane amount of viral load, and it would a robust enough immune system would always be the viral load wouldn't matter?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Okay, so I think so. If you never get sick, that's actually a sign of not a great immune system, and if you always get sick, that's a sign of not a great immune system. Here, oh, sorry, you're like, I'll move over. So if your immune system is constantly on overdrive, you may not get sick, or you may always get sick. So that's kind of like two extreme reactions. So a healthy immune system should get sick 1 to 2 times a year, but you should be able to like kick it and recover. But you're right. Essentially, like if you are not in a state of oxidative stress, like you can handle a much larger viral overload. Yeah. Especially people who are like taking care of themselves and then also exposed to a lot, because then you're building up. It's like that 4th and 5th line of defense, right? The antigens and antibodies, the lock and key, and then the T cells are remembering. So like, I would assume that somebody who lives a more sheltered and isolated life that is like doesn't have a lot of toxicity and has a nutrient dense diet probably wouldn't have the same robust immune system as someone who's exposed to a lot of people. So that would be an interesting theory too. Introverts or extroverts get sick more than, you know, like who's exposed to germs more often? I don't know.
So the thing on raw milk, so raw milk's not bad for you, raw milk is good for you.
Good for you, yes.
So can you ever get sick from drinking raw milk?
Theoretically, there's basically no cases of it whatsoever.
It depends on the practice too. Like if you know the farm has
Yes.
really good healthy practices,
Yes.
then you trust.
So like, yeah, I wouldn't drink raw milk from a conventional dairy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like anyone that's selling raw milk in a raw, like that has a raw milk farm, like they know when their cows are sick, they are like kept in clear open pasture and clean space. So the likelihood of getting sick from raw milk is next to, I mean, it's like breast milk. We don't pasteurize our breast milk, and I'm never worried about my baby getting sick, you know?
Storage is important too.
Yes.
You don't want to leave it out.
Yeah. But if you do, you could totally drink it. It'd be fine. It would just be like, I mean, if it was left out a long time,
That's what
it would
I'm
be
saying.
sour.
Yeah.
But like, if it goes sour, like unlike pasteurized milk, like it doesn't, like pasteurized milk will curdle and turn bad. Where now you left it out and you're like, well, first stage of yogurt is to leave the milk out for 24 hours. So I guess we're making yogurt, you know? Like,
Protein shake or something.
yes, yeah. Then sometimes we won't drink the milk like fast enough where it will start to sour, and we've kind of gotten accustomed to it, so I think we can drink it on the cusp of it getting sour a lot more than we used to. But yeah, and it's like almost like buttermilk. So it's now we're making pancakes, or we're throwing it in a smoothie somewhere where you can't taste it, and like.
And where did you say you were getting your milk from?
So it's a company called Harmony Acres, and it's a farm in Pennsylvania, and so we're part of a co-op. And it feels like we're doing like some shady dealings. Like you pick it up in a dirt lot off the bed of a pickup or like a semi truck in the middle of nowhere, you know, like in Temecula. And then we have a riverside group that like we send one person out there and they get all the Riverside orders and brings them back, and then we kind of rotate that. It's like it feels super shady.
And you order once a month.
Yep. So we order once a month. So we do have a deep freezer. We freeze our milk. But yeah, our family, we go through 12 gallons. I have a teenager who loves it and a baby that loves it. So we're like, I'm like, do we need more than 12 gallons? I'm like, slow down, guys. So yeah,
It's made all the difference for us, because I used to be lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
You
and
know, a
then-
lot of dairy in your diet.
Are you
yeah.
part of the co-op?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
But they
Yeah,
have
we
raw
do too.
butter, cheese. They have this grade B maple syrup that's like, oh, it's just
And the
the
yogurt.
best.
Yeah,
The
the
yogurt's
food's
so
like
good.
legitimately better. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's really good.
feel really good.
You feel really good from it. The point you just made about you wouldn't drink raw milk from a conventional farm. I actually wonder if that's gonna be a problem going forward, because I think things are shifting. And I
Yeah.
think conventional farms might try to like label a raw milk or something like that. So we might start to get some bad. I mean, we just had the whole thing with like
Yes.
bird flu's getting spread through raw milk and that kind of stuff. It's funny, like every one of my friends that sent it to me, I'm like, I know like your views on health
Yeah.
right now.
So I'm
like,
gonna be buying extra this month,
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah,
okay?
exactly.
It's
But
gonna be
I
hard to
wonder if
find.
it actually will legitimately be a problem. Like raw milk that
Yeah.
you get at Albertsons or whatever might be like this really like susceptible to disease and
Exactly.
that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I think. Yeah, I think one of the things that makes the farm so unique too is that like they're all traditional farmers. So their land has never seen tractors or like pesticides or, you know, the oil and engine oil from the tractor. Like it's just like so good. We get like breakfast sausage, bacon, like all of it is just, I do have like baked goods and pastries. I mean, you can get a little carried away. It can get expensive, but gotta rein it in. But yeah, we got like an apple pie for Christmas and it was so delicious and it wasn't super sweet. And I was like, this is like better than homemade. Like this is better than I could make it because the ingredients are so good. And so yeah, that's
So
been
step
great.
one, get a garage freezer, right?
Yes, yeah,
Every
deep freezer.
several sizes, should I get like, you know, inside this couch here, you know?
Yes.
Put
So
a dead
we-
body in there, you know?
We have a 7 cubic foot deep freezer, and then we also have like a standing fridge and freezer in the garage, and then the freezer in the house. So a lot of
Well,
freezer
but you
space.
have a big family. We
That's
just have
true.
the two of us.
That's
and
true.
We just have a regular freezer.
But that's
in
for
the
your
house.
meat too.
That's true. We do. We go in on a cow every year, so that takes up.
So you do need a dead body.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. The cow's gotta fit. Yeah. But yeah, you can make it. You can make it work. If you're interested, I could give you the info, and you can even like you could probably tack on to like one of our orders and just like give it a try before you like decide you want to like join.
Sure, I'm sure I wanna join.
Yeah, the heavy cream is like
Oh my God,
it's
I eat like ice
thick.
cream.
Like heavy cream, you know, in the carton you like pour it out. Like the heavy cream is like spoonful. Like it does look like ice cream. It's so thick. Like it. The first time I was like, this is really really thick. Like thicker than yogurt, but so
Do you
good.
guys get all your cheese and butter from there as well? Wow.
Yeah, we get our eggs from there too. So we can't find eggs at the grocery store right now. Like, and their yolks are just like so dark. And
I know, it's so weird.
the shells are really thick too. Like for a while, the farm was having to limit their eggs, and so I bought some at the store. And I felt like I was like Goliath or something. I just like smashed the store-bought egg on the counter because the shell was so much thinner than I was
Yeah.
used to like cracking. I was like, let's try to like scoop it up. No, those are great questions. Any other thoughts or questions, or maybe you want to share like, okay, this is my new immune boosting protocol. This is what I want to try and implement. It doesn't have to be everything, but you know, hopefully there's some practical, easy things to implement. Any thoughts? Okay. Everything. I know there are always a few type A people in the room that are like, I'm gonna do all of it. Okay, but if you had to pick one thing that you were like, okay, this is easy, I could add that without like much extra cost or time. Like, what do you think would be the dry brushing? Yeah,
Getting out in the sun 15 minutes a day or more,
yeah.
even if it's cold.
And then practice your nose breathing.
Yeah, the mouth
Daniel
taking
screwed.
kind of gets me a little nervous. Yes. We actually, when we lived up north, this was back in like 2014 to 18, one of our friends from a family member, her name was Addie, but she was really into raw raw milk and all that, and she had her husband mouth taped, and I felt so bad for him because he just had, I think he might have had like a deviated septum.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he was like borderline suffocating when he's sleeping. She's like, no, you got a mouth tape. It stresses me out.
Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't want to do it
Can't
if you were
breathe,
like
you know?
sick or stuffy. And they also sell like breathe right strips that you could get for your nose that kind of
Yeah.
help lift stuff up. But yeah, you would
Yeah.
definitely wouldn't want to do it when you're sick. But
Yeah.
it does. It is a weird sensation. Like the first like week, it's like there's something on my
I know.
mouth.
Like somebody has a pillow over your face.
But then you get used to it.
Yeah. But I think about my son. I also think about when you said the thing about lights. We actually just talked about my daughter Taylor. She loves having Christmas lights up in her room and the closet lights on. The kids are afraid of the dark. But then we both told them like when they sneak in our room at night, and then when they do sleep with us, it's completely dark and they'll sleep for hours.
Yeah.
We group out in the morning and it's like, but they wake up in their room. They're up by like sometimes 6 o'clock, 6:30.
Maybe you could do like a timer on the lights so they're on until they fall asleep,
Yeah.
and then like
Yeah.
when they're not, your sleep will improve, their sleep will improve.
Yeah.
You know?
I think also too, like getting a Wi-Fi timer. I think that's something I've been wanting to do for a while as well.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and I'm like both of her kids, all of them had pacifiers. I'm like, great, kids are done.
No, it's okay. I was formula fed, bottle fed, all the things, and I'm okay. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too. Like we just try to actively because sometimes I've noticed I will be breathing through my nose, but my tongue is relaxed and not on the roof of my mouth. So we'll be driving and I'll be like, tongues up, like telling the kids, like, and we're all like, yeah, okay. I know. Sometimes Alyssa will be reminding Daniel, and I'm like, put my tongue up, I'm like,
And having the tongue on the roof of your mouth improves your oxygen.
It does, and it helps widen the palate to where you need it to be and strengthen, like, if like, have you ever gotten like something kind of like a piece of food stuck in that little like flap of skin, but where like in your nose and mouth, the top of your mouth is kind of soft up there? Like that should actually be pretty strong, and so over time, it'll be like, it should be normal for your mouth to just like subconsciously rest on the roof of your tongue to rest on the roof of your mouth. And for most of us, like, that's not the case, Like we were just watching Napoleon Dynamite, not just recently with my children. I'm like, he's a mouth breather. Don't be a mouth breather. Look at that. And like, like tongue on the roof of your mouth. Yeah. So it's like it's habit training, but we're not a lost cause. It's okay.
No, and you're saying most of the stuff too, like my in-laws, like my mother-in-law, my wife's mom, she is constantly dealing with sicknesses, but I think it's because she definitely has vitamin D insufficiency where she works indoors, but then she's also afraid of the sun. She's constantly outside with an umbrella, like she'll take walks if it's not too hot, but if it's hot, and she also has very fair skin, so she'll burn easily.
Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of struck that fear up. And then she also has a hard time. She also has bad sinuses to where I think mouth taping for her would probably stress her out. But
Yeah.
I think she doesn't get good sleep. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell her about the vitamin D drops and.
Yeah. So yeah, vitamin D drops, salt room cold plunge.
Yeah.
Like, get her a little bit
Sunbed to build up your defense with your skin.
Yeah. I mean, you might have to work up to her on the sunbed. She
Yeah.
might need to do all the other things first.
Yeah.
So like I've got, I don't know if it's deviated septum anymore, but it's just my nose is from MMA and stuff. This is not what it used to be, and so I don't breathe as well. So like Christian said, the breathe right strips, but not just those. Just there's actually ones where you can like tape these little magnets to your nose, and it's like a hard one. That one opens your nose more than like a typical breathe right strip. And then, and I'm not good at mouth taping, like, so I'm gonna have to implement this, but I do breathe better even when I wasn't mouth taping. Just having my nose open, it'll help a lot. And so the nights where I would mouth tape, I'm gonna have to practice this again, but rubbing a little bit of what's the one that opens up your sound?
Like
Peppermint. Put a little peppermint, just dab it right on your nose, at least while you're still awake. It like diffuses enough into your nose so that your passageways feel really like open and stuff, and so it's comfortable enough, like in that kind of uncomfortable state, that it makes it like tolerable to fall asleep and stuff.
You
so.
can also do, they do sell some like mouth guards that are designed to like kind of pull the bottom jaw forward and keep the mouth closed. So we didn't
Okay.
wanna, like, which might be easier for, like, kids who would be, like, freaking out about, like, mouth taping.
Yeah.
But we started doing it a couple years ago, and my youngest was, like, 6, and she was fine, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to be careful not, like, my kids would be, like, ripping it off in the morning, and then they would get, like, they're, like, looks like they've been, like, licking, like, sucking their lips, you know, so it's, like, get it wet, and then just, like, peel it off slowly, and then,
Well, they have that, like, our kids do that Maya tape where it has a hole cut out in the middle too. Is that
Yeah.
where you already mentioning that?
no, it was, like, a mouth guard,
So
but
it
yeah.
basically just encourages their own muscles to close. So they could
Okay.
still technically open their mouth, but it's just like it makes it more natural to keep it closed. Like, and it
Oh,
eventually
nice.
trains your own muscles too. So like, Daniel, like he can't breathe very well for his nose because he's been such a mouth breather. So we do the Maya tape, so it's like encouraged and not forced.
That sounds like derogatory. You're a mouth breather.
What about you, Salt and Light ladies? Do you have a new protocol you want to implement?
I'm definitely gonna be taping my mouth because I always wake up and my throat will be like a little dry until I like brush my teeth, and I feel like that'll probably help with the dryness as well.
Yeah, for sure. You're actually less likely to get cavities too if you're not mouth breathing,
Wow.
because you're like circulating bacteria in your mouth when your mouth is open. So, yeah, it's a good one. You have one?
Um,
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I was actually thinking about the raw milk because my daughter will be 1 in a month and a half.
Yeah.
So getting her started on that.
Yeah, my kiddo's just over 1 and he loves it.
Yeah.
That's his jam.
I was really happy to hear you say that eggs was one of the complete proteins in life. Do you like eggs? My kids, like Taylor's over eggs, but I'm like, you're gonna continue to eat eggs.
Yeah.
She's very strong. She's yeah.
Yeah.
You
like,
just gotta get creative, cook them in different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll do them raw too. My kids will make smoothies and they'll pop an egg in there. The raw egg.
I can't do
Makes it fun for them.
Yeah. It's not. It doesn't really change the flavor or anything.
Yeah.
If you have to kind of like blend the smoothie and then add the egg last because the whites will get kind of like the
Okay.
peak and like whipped, so it'll change the texture. But yeah, we're not worried about salmonella or any of those things. So yeah, that's great. Any other questions or thoughts? Do you want to do a raffle? I forgot to ask
yeah.
you about.
Tori, do you have the raffle stuff? Or did we do the
That would
raffle?
be fun.
Or no, we didn't.
We
Did we
didn't.
have the tickets?
No, we
Okay.
didn't have it.
We can just like cut a piece of paper or something.
Yeah.
People can write their names on them. I meant to do that before I
Do
left and then I
a,
forgot.
Pick a number between 1 and 10. No. Yeah, if you want to do that, that'd be great. Yeah.
This is also one of my favorite cookbooks. If you guys want to leaf through it or take a picture, I referenced it in some of those additional resources. But this is like, if you're wanting to learn like a more traditional diet and get back to the roots, this.
Well, thank you, Christian. I just want to thank you. This is really good stuff. I'm definitely gonna drink that drink. That was good. So that's like a morning. Do you do it like afternoon?
Yeah, like before you would normally get your crash, you want like a second cup of coffee. You don't have to.
Sweet. I like salty sweet, so.
Yeah, it's a great combo.
Alright guys, so Tori's gonna give you a little raffle ticket here. We'll just do a drawing for, we have $100 gift card and or $100 gift card or $200 gift card?
It was 100, I think.
Okay, a $100 gift card. To Salt and Light, where else? I mean.
Christian,
Oh, I'll
what
take
is
that.
the
Thank you.
brand name, Christian, what is the brand name to the charcoal that you recommend?
Sorry, I just have one more.